Hey, how you doing? Martin Lopez here again for our Saturday morning talk. I'm with my buddy Adriana Rosales, Haro, and how you doing, Adriana?
I'm doing great. How are you, Martin, this morning?
I'm doing terrific. Super excited to get started again. We were talking yesterday, and we were talking about your book, The Corporate Code, and which is out November 10th, right on Amazon.
Right, right.
That's exciting. Now, currently, people can get the book, right?
Yes, they can. They can go to my publisher at the book patch, and then I know that there's going to be a link down below that we can guide people to.
That's awesome. And then you're having somebody do an audio, so that'll be out in December.
In December, yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's super exciting. That's awesome. Well, we were talking about your book yesterday, and I really enjoyed the conversation. And we were talking about what does it take to be a great leader. That was the topic that we talked about there, and you were sharing with me that and a lot of stuff from the corporate code. So I'm going to step aside too and ask you this. How about if we talk about the kind of like what led you to write the book and how the steps you took to do that.
Absolutely. So about 4 years ago, Martin, I decided to leave the corporate world, which was a huge step for myself and my family. And one of the main reasons was that I was really seeing this gap between boss and employees, and I really felt that I needed to step away from the corporate world to start writing. And I had a series of experiences within my experience in the corporate world. Initially, I started with telecommunications, and then I was working for a finance company, and I had always had these amazing bosses. However, the last company that I worked for, which was a finance company, there was a particular boss that I had that that he led a very interesting a very interesting team. And at the time, he was the VP that I worked for directly. I was managing over 20 locations, and I had over 200 employees. So
Well, let's get real. Let's get real. You said very interesting because you're trying to be politically correct in this crazy environment that we're living in. I mean, basically, what you were telling me, the guy was mean. He was.
I was sharing with you that there was a particular incident that really propelled me to question a lot of things in the corporate world. And one of them was when I had initially started with the company back in 2011. I had been invited to have lunch with my boss and all of my colleagues. And I remember we were at BJ's, and they were sitting around, and I was the only woman, and they were laughing and saying that, it was Red Folder Mondays, and everyone seemed to be amused about it. And I was like, well, what is this red? I want in on it, right? I'm, trying to.
I want to be a player.
I'm like, what is this Red Folder Mondays? And turns out that these gentlemen would get together on Mondays, and they would go into the locations. They would just kind of guess on the folder, and these folders had the information of the employees. And on Mondays, they would go in as the game, and they would fire people just because they felt like it. Now, when I found this out, it was crazy. I couldn't even believe it was happening. I thought it was first initially all a joke, and then I was like, no, this is really happening. So they would go in and fire these people. Now, I was new, so I had, within my experience in the corporate world, I had created this environment where I would always protect my employees. However, when I would take vacation, I would come back, and then some of my employees would no longer be with the company. And I live in Nevada, so we're an at-will state, which means that you don't necessarily have to have any reprimands or anything. You can just come in one morning, and then you no longer have a career or a job. So I was stunned. I was really stunned. And I first of all, I had never worked for anybody that led that way.
So you guys go to a restaurant. It's Monday. They bring folders in, and in the folder there's names.
There's names of certain employees that they, for whatever reason, would want to let go of. And I questioned. I was like, well, why would we want to do that? And it was like this big joke, this big game that they had going on. Up until that point, I had some really amazing people that had led me and that I had worked for.
Sure.
So this was new to me. I didn't understand the philosophy. I didn't understand why this was happening, really.
Yeah.
And yeah, so so thus my experience within this company, and I continued working for them. Initially the first couple years I was terrified, because I was like a single parent at the time, and I'm like, well, do I go to HR and let them know, and do I try to resolve it on my own? And eventually, after a couple of years, I did go to HR. Nothing happened. This individual continued to let people go without cause, I felt, in my opinion, because the people that were being let go, every other Monday had no reprimands, were performing just fine.
What was the environment? What was the culture like? Was it just was it a team that you had, or did this guy run the whole company?
I had a team. It was a privately held company, and the every director had a certain amount of stores, and then within those stores we would lead the employees, and a lot of it was training and leading individuals to perform at their sales quota and that type of thing. So he was overseeing the entire. Our head office was not in Nevada, so the individuals that were here, which is us and my colleagues, we would run these different locations, and he was stationed here as well. So this individual pretty much was controlling and doing everything, and had of course above him was the CFO, so forth and so on.
Sure. Yeah.
He was running the show on his own, and like I was sharing with you a couple of days ago, I feel like it was that this man came into my life to show me a lesson. It was a blessing, because out of this experience with this company, I was really gung-ho about writing about it. So I initially started writing the book 4 years ago, and I had sent it to a friend to get reviewed. And he, I waited a couple of weeks, and finally he got back to me. I was really curious to find out, well, what did he think about it? What was his take on it? Some feedback, right? So then he gets on the phone, and he's like, he sounds terrified, right? He said, what I'm about to tell you, right? He's like, you sound really angry in the book. And I was like, what do you mean I sound angry? And then I was like, okay, well, he gave me some pointers, and then I remember coming home and just saying, you know what? And it was 300 pages, and I just tossed it. I just threw it away.
Wow.
And then I started again. I was almost started again. So it took me another year. I wrote about 200 pages now, which was a lot less. And so I sent it to him again. And then, I get on the phone with him after a couple of weeks, and then he's like, you know what? You sound really bitter. Right. So I was like, wait, well, I'm bitter about the fact that you said I was angry.
No, is that, are you getting closer?
I'm getting closer, right? And so I come back home, and I said, okay, I'm not going to put anything out there that is angry or bitter. And, that tells you a lot about what happened during my time with this company. So I threw it away, and I started again. So now I'm into the third year.
500 pages.
Working, right. And now I'm at 160 pages. So that I'm working through the stories and working through the content. And then I realized, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to write about the horrible experience that I had with this one boss. I'm going to write about these amazing experiences that I had with like 5 different bosses that I had since I was in my 20s. And the amazing qualities that they had, and the amazing things and how they led me, and how they led the teams, and what it was that they did to be great leaders. And I just started taking note, and I started being really grateful that I had the opportunity to work for these people. Some really incredible individuals that taught me to just really get a handle on things. And the book is called Corporate Code, because it was a code, if you will, or pillars of these unique ways of being that really made them stellar leaders. And one of them, I'll give you the 4, all of them trusted themselves. All of them were of service to their teams. All of them were courageous to be different. And then they had, when they would make decisions, they were really compassionate about it. So those are the 4 pillars: the trust, service, compassion, and encourage. These are the traits that I found were consistent when
trust,
I looked.
Trust, service, compassion,
service, compassion, and courage.
That's awesome.
And not in the real basic primitive way of looking at it, but for example, when I talk about trust, I talk about how the individuals that led me, they really trusted themselves. They trusted who they were as people. They trusted their gut instinct. They trusted, making decisions. And because they trusted themselves, they also trusted me with whatever project was on board. For example, I was when I was working in Puerto Rico as a marketing director, I worked directly for the mayor, and he was just an incredible person to work for. He really trusted himself, first of all, and then he trusted me to do this big, huge job. I remember I was in my mid-20s and I was running the marketing department for the city of Aguadilla in Puerto Rico.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I remember looking back now, which is years ago, how he just gave me the keys to, literally gave me the keys to the city and gave me his trust and gave me the opportunity to really show what I had. And he, out of the people that I worked for, this one mayor was just an incredible human being. And it's interesting because most of his staff were also young leaders, and he'd hire young people because he really believed in, the next generation leading. So that was one example of an amazing leader that I talk about in the book. Oh, I lost your audio there.
Is that better?
There we go. Yeah, there we go.
Okay, I'm right by Miramar, and there's going to be an air show in a little bit, and the
cool.
Blue Angels and all those are going to start flying over pretty soon.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. We get to watch it from our backyard. It's really cool. So the first pillar is trust. The first pillar is trust, and so I would say my version of trust, and I just want to share that, like from the curiosity theory. Why I was so taken by what you said, and is that trust is such a foundation of life. If you're going to be in any type of relationship, there's got to be trust. We've got to be able to trust that's where safety happens, is in trust. Right. And got to know that I can trust this other person, that they've got my back, or I've got their back, or I got to trust that things are going to go in the right direction. It goes along with hope and all those other things, and belief, but it's got to be such a strong pillar, and it's really cool that you distinguish that as one of the pillars, one of the main pillars, and it's so foundational, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. I mean, you really can't be a great leader unless you understand the work, I call it, where you have to trust yourself beyond a shadow of a doubt, because if you do not trust yourself, then there's no way that you can trust your employees. There's no way that you can trust the people around you. And it's just fundamental. It's a fundamental key.
You're always second guessing yourself. If you don't trust yourself, then just in life in general, as a leader of a family, or as a leader of a team, or a corporation, an organization, anything, like you say, you don't trust yourself. How are you gonna feel like you're on some degree of steady ground? And then everything else, if you're looking at somebody else, you're probably watching them, hoping that it works out. That's not trust. That's kind of like walking on eggshells.
Exactly. And then, you and I teach this about the stress level that comes with always walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
That was one of our connectors when we first met, is we talk about the cortisol in your body and the fight and flight response, and that, we really need to pay attention. And I think that nowadays, when we understand the importance of trusting yourself first, we can avoid, being stressed out or being in anxiety, because the reality is that when your trust level for yourself is high, then, who cares what anybody says? It only matters how you trust yourself, and you trust your decisions. And that alleviates, really think about it, any anxiety or stress, because you're sure, you're certain. I'll give you an example of another trust story, where when I was in the Silicon Valley, I remember walking into a marketing firm right after I left the Air Force. And I, young, in my early 20s, and full of confidence, because that's what the Air Force does, for you. And, asked to talk to the vice president. I wanted a job doing, coordinating trade shows for this company. And I remember, they were so shocked that I had the gall to walk in there and ask for the vice president. So the vice president sits down. I have like an hour interview with her. She had no reason to hire me. And she hired me anyways. She's like, you're so gutsy. You came in here and you're, full of confidence, and you just knew that you were, you wanted this job. And then years later, when I left the company to move to Puerto Rico, I remember asking her, I said, why did you hire me? I mean, I didn't have the qualifications. I had just left the military. And then she said, you know what? I just trusted. I had a gut feeling. I trusted that you were going to do a good job, that you were hungry. And so I'm grateful every day, man, because that was a great career that I had for a while there. And it was all based on her trust level, not in me, but her trust level and her gut level telling her that, yeah, this girl is going to perform. And she trusted herself.
Yes.
And she was one of the best VPs I had ever worked for. And it was, because she showed a level of trust with herself first. So
I like that. So you're saying trust yourself, not just trust.
Right. And I think that I want to, in the book, I want to be clear that everybody says, oh, you need to trust people and you need to trust life, but really you need to trust yourself.
You got to have a place to start, right?
Right. You trust you trust yourself, then you're golden. No matter what happens to you or how you do life, there is an internal knowing, an internal place of confidence that you're going to be fine.
Wow. So what's the second pillar? Again, let's go.
So the second pillar is being of service to others. And I found that the bosses that I had worked for in the past were, for example, they would say phrases like, you don't work for me, we work together. So when we would start a meeting, let's all join in and collaborate. They would use words like collaboration and we work together. And, a lot of times it was a vice president telling me, at the time I was a store manager managing a T-Mobile store. And I remember my boss at the time was inclusive and wouldn't treat me like I was just an employee, but would treat me like I was part of the team, and then would also give me the opportunity to speak. In a way, not just to speak, but to also make decisions at her level as well. And I think that a lot of people in the corporate world are really uncomfortable with, letting go of the title or the power and saying, hey, I allow you to also be part of this space. So yeah, that was, when I wrote about how great leaders are of service, they have this attitude of really serving, if you will, humanity. Coming into any conversation, any relationship at work, saying, hey, here I have the privilege to lead and manage 200 employees. There is a difference between leadership and management, as you know, but I have the opportunity to lead, and I'm going to make sure that my employees know that I'm here to serve them. And that's huge. That's a huge philosophy to have, I believe.
Well, it sounds to me like what you're saying is when you have the trust, that's foundational. And then you put the next part, which is service, which is, okay, now I'm good. I trust myself, and now I trust everybody. So now let's lead. Now let's move into the next phase, which is let's get it done. And I'm the leader, and this is how I'm going to lead. I'm going to lead by trusting you to do what you have to do. I'm empowering you. I'm empowered by myself. And what we're going to do is we're going to serve. We're going to serve. That's what we're going to do. And it seems to me like what we talk about, it seems like you and I talk about so much of the same thing in the curiosity theory. When we deal with our foundations, we deal with our core needs, like those Maslow's hierarchy of needs, survival, safety, love and belonging, self-esteem, self-transcendence, self-actualization. When we deal with those foundations, then we can move higher, and then we can start to give back. And being of service to people is a higher need. And if we know that we got our base needs met, then we then trust that, and then we then move forward and go, okay, well, what's next? Eventually, we want to give back. Eventually, we want to teach. Eventually, we want to bring the people that have their hand up and say, hey, I want to know about that. I'd like to know about that. I'd like to learn. I'd like to be a leader. I'd like to be somebody that's in charge of something. I'd like somebody to trust me. I'd like somebody to put their faith in me. Well, great. This is how we're going to do it. And then that has people be inspired.
Absolutely. And if you notice that the great leaders, they have that language, they have that jargon within their corporations and in cubicles in the office, right? Where they talk about, how can I help you? How can I help my customer? How can I be of service? And even like, I remember having this different boss in telecom tell me, I know that you're not going to do telecommunications for the rest of your life. So what is it that you want to do, and how can I help you get there? And I was stunned. I was shocked because I was like, oh, yes, he wants to help me here in this company, but he also cares about what it is I'm going to do in the future, and he's willing to help me.
Mm.
And I thought that's massive. That's amazing that someone would want to help me get ahead, even if it's not with the company, but they would want me to get ahead just in the world. And I found that really unique and really special that someone would say that. And that was another boss that I had that was all about serving. That was all about helping. So
That's
yeah,
why
was really
coaching is. Yeah, I think that's why coaching is so powerful, because when people want to be coached, when people say, "Hey, I'm ready to be coached. I'm coachable," they're at a point of I'm going to serve myself by listening, and I'm going to serve others. Like, tell me how to be the best I can be. How can I be the best I can be? And that serves the coach, that serves themselves, and it's just everybody. It makes a difference for everybody, and it happens. It constantly happens. It happens multiple times a day in business. I'm in sales, so I'm a loan officer. So I constantly have people calling me and doing exactly what you're saying, trusting me. When people give me their information, they give me all their personal information,
right.
social security, full name, address, give me everything about themselves. I pull their credit. They send me their tax returns. I mean, that's what I get that stuff from my customers in sometimes in a matter of minutes from the first time I meet them. And that's what that's the first pillar is trust. It's that trust. And then the next pillar, the next part is, being in service. When you're of service to somebody, then they know it. They're connected to it. It's not even really something you can describe. It's something that we feel. Like we're just connected. This person is serving me. In sales, when you walk into a store and a person is there for you, that. It's a different experience that you have. Oh, I think she just dropped out. She'll be right back, I'm sure. So when you're in, let me put my, there she is. Okay. So
Yeah.
when you're in a sales situation, let's say like you said, we were talking about working in a like a telephone store. I say, so I walk into a Verizon or one of those places, and people just you can tell sometimes they have a different agenda, and the agenda isn't you.
Right.
It's like, well, what's going on here?
You can always, like I said earlier, I was really privileged to work with some amazing bosses, and you can always tell the difference between the real great ones because it's all in their language. It's all in their language. Yeah. And it's the way they run meetings, and it's the way that they do life, So I always paid attention to language. So earlier you were talking about coaching, how important coaching can really get you to the next level. I had a friend of mine just yesterday was my friend Gabby, who's telling me that she finally got a coach, and she's paying him, a decent amount of money a month. But she's like, oh my God, in the last 3 months I have grown so much. And I'm like, I know, I have seen you because I've seen her on Facebook, and she's out of nowhere. She just came out of nowhere. And I said, something happened between last year and 3 months ago. And that difference was that she got a coach. Yeah. She got a coach to coach her on her blind spots, on what she thought she knew or what she didn't know she didn't know. Yeah. And that's what coaches can do for you. That's what great leaders can do for you, is that they can give you access to worlds that you possibly are not aware of. So I think that's super important, number one, to identify, and then number two, to really do what it is that you need to do your life and become better by inquiring with the right people. And if you need a coach, then get a coach, but understanding that we all need to evolve past a lot of what's going on in the corporate world. And because I had these amazing bosses in the past, when I came to this one particular company and saw what was happening and how employees were being treated, I was shocked. I was like, this is not possible. I was in denial. Like the first year, I was in total denial, pretending it wasn't happening.
So, and we talked about that yesterday too. It was we were talking about that, and that how he was he was a particular way, and you were saying you were not mad at him, and then we kind of yeah.
Mm-hmm. I wasn't mad at him because I I was in denial. First of all, I was in denial. I was like, how could they be going every Monday and firing people for no reason, right?
Yeah.
And then, he'd send these nasty emails, and I often hesitated because I'm like, should I go tell him that this is not being received well by this?
This isn't a good idea.
Right? He would give, like, remember I told you, like, some football analogies and how everyone was going to get fired if they didn't get it together, and there was a way of leading that was based on fear. If you don't do what I say, you're not going to be here tomorrow. And I mean, that's what it was. I was in denial about it, but that's what it was. And as I wrote the book and as I healed that experience, I realized that that I wasn't very compassionate, that I wasn't exercising those things that I valued, that I was judging him, that I was doing a lot of things that that they weren't conducive to helping the situation or helping him. And so I did the full circle, and I said, hey, let me look at me first. Let me see what I did wrong. And then, really investigate, why did I have such a hard time with this individual? And he was, like I was sharing with you, I felt like he was a blessing, because if I hadn't had that experience, I wouldn't have written the book, right? And I wouldn't have understood. Absolutely. Yeah, I wouldn't have understood how brave I was, because it was a series of things that happened where I put myself in a situation where I was really brave. I was, acting on the behalf of my employees and making sure that, the right things were being done because they were ethical and moral, and no judgment on him. I send him good vibes all the time, and I wish him the best. When I left, there was no hard feelings, because I knew that he had been a teacher for me. Yes. He had taught me what it was. I had a thing. Things were happening in front of me that I knew were not who I was.
Yeah.
And I moved on. I came to a place where I was like, I'm better than this situation. I need to remove myself from the situation. I was really fortunate because I moved on, and I was not upset. I had worked it out, worked it through. So I think that it's, I thank him every day.
Absolutely. That's cool. And then what we talked about next was how I, looked at it, like through the curiosity theory. And I was like, I'm curious, like, what made him tick? Like, what is it that causes an individual to think that, or to operate or have a strategy that every Monday I open a book, a red book. I have a red book here. Open a red book, pick out a name, point to a name, basically, and that person then loses their job. And right. I mean, okay, so let's not label it. It can label it evil, what a jerk, all those kinds of things. And that's where mostly people go. Mostly we label something and we call something a name, and then that is where we stop, because the name is how we express our displeasure for something. Right now in our, if we just look at our country, and we talk about this thing that's just happened over the last few days or last few weeks with the Supreme Court justice, and then Ford, and then what's his name, Kavanaugh. We could all have our opinion about both of those, and it seems that everybody has their opinion. What happens is we have our opinion, and then we have that guy's a jerk, that guy's a piece of blah blah blah, she's a liar, she's a and we have all these labels, and then when we then give those labels, we then move forward with those labels, right or wrong. I'm not saying anybody's right, I'm not saying anybody's wrong. What I'm trying to distinguish is that we create labels, and those labels are how we then operate. We operate as though what we're saying, what we think, which is an emotion, which is the guy's a jerk, she's terrible, whatever. And then we move forward with those things as though that is what's true.
Right.
This is true. And then we operate everything we operate that. But where does that come from? Where does all of that come from? That we believe what we think.
Yeah. And it's just judgment. It's judgment. It's judgment. When we decide that we want to be, in a place of love, when we decide that we want to be in a state of being a loving human being, then there is no judgment. There's no judgment. And
Yeah.
then we are human beings that judge everything. We have meaning to everything. So we do have to come to a place where we say, you know what? My question to myself every day is like, am I being in a state of love? Am I in a state of love now? Am I being loving? Am I, creating this environment where people feel loved around me? And it sounds so primitive, I think, that especially when you talk about love in the corporate world, but that's really what it's about. Because when you're asking, why is there judgment? Why do people get all nitpicky about, especially about what's happening with this whole scenario with the judge and this woman? Is yes, how can we step back and say, let's not judge, let's just look at them like two human beings. Oh my God, I feel so bad for both of them
Yeah.
because they're going through hell and back, both of them. And it's unfortunate. It's the state of the current affairs. And my job is to be in a place of love, which means there's no judgment for her, and then there's no judgment for him.
Yeah. And where's the support? Where's the, there's so much to say about it. There's so much to say about it.
I know.
But
It's such a complicated.
But we don't go further because the drama of being a human being allows us to be in, if what we want to do is be in a state of drama or be in a state of a thought, that we let those thoughts capture us. And that's what the news understands. That the news, I'm going to go off on a tangent real quick. The news understands that they can capture our thoughts. They can plant seeds, fertilize, grow, water, all that. And then that is what we think about. And we're going to be over and over thinking about that. And when we think about it more, we have to go back to the news to get more information, to get more, because it's primal. It's primal. And this is what you said, is love is primal too, or something like that. And yes, love is primal. So if we can learn to separate what's important, is the drama important or is the love important? Let's say they're both primal. Let's say drama is primal, because in that whole fight, flight, or freeze, and the whole amygdala in our brain, it's looking for bad news. It's looking for trouble to keep us alive, to keep us safe. So, and that's what the news understands that. So do we want to follow love, or do we want to follow drama and judgment and all those things? Well, the easy thing to follow is drama. The easy thing to follow is danger. And our brains have to follow that danger. So we have to create danger scenarios so that it hooks our brain. And that's what happens. Right. That's how these guys that are building these apps, these guys that are building these games, these guys that are putting the news on, they understand that. Right. And like you said, you have to be able to see yourself. And that is called awareness. So you had this awareness when you went through this whole situation, didn't you?
I did. I came to my happy place. I was like, wait, I don't want to be, I don't want to be, like this person. And I'm not like this person. So I need to remove myself, from it. And I always had this saying where I would say, you are, if you have a boss that's a certain way, eventually you pick up their traits and their lingo and the way they do business. So I was always really aware. I'm like, well, always kind of, moving away from that, because I knew that wasn't the right way to be. And perhaps I stayed there a little bit too long, but, to paraphrase what you're saying is, yes, that we're human beings. So we're constantly looking for that adrenaline and that adventure and that kind of, where the news really just exploits us. Yeah, they do. I'm a huge fan of Peter Diamandis, and he wrote the book years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. He wrote the book Abundance, The Future is Better Than You Think. And when I read that book, my entire world it just shifted, because I realized that what I was being told in the media and even stuff that you read when it's not on the internet, it's not true. It's not true. Yeah. We are living in a place where things are a lot better than it seems. It's, a lot of the things that we're being fed is not true. And if we're being told certain things from, certain news media, it's because they're getting ratings and they're getting views. They're getting eyeballs. So when we become aware of those things, then we really can step away from it and then make, I'm not going to say better decisions, but make different decisions that will better suit you. And they're not based on on a stress level where you're so, you're so wired up that, you got to do this and you got to do that. And your life is kind of chaotic. And, you can only sustain that kind of stress for so long. Eventually you get, your anxiety attacks, your heart attacks, you develop a disease in your body. So when you become aware of it, you really do have a certain level of, I'm not even going to say control, but you do have a certain level of awareness where you're like, oh, I don't need to be this. I don't need to follow that, or I don't need to judge that, or I don't need to, in my case, I don't need to have full judgment on this man because there was a lot of awful things that happened. But I was also someone that, never said anything. I think it was like the second year when I went to HR and finally, was terrified to share what was happening, and still nothing happened, and I did my job. I went and I shared the information. The company did nothing about it, and then I was in a place where I had to make decisions, and I did.
That's awesome. That's great. So let's go over there's so much we can talk. I mean, I could just so much to say about this. I got a whole story that I told you about when I was younger, and that is what led me to have more compassion and more empathy about the other side. And maybe we'll talk about that next week. But then the third pillar is making compassionate decisions. Let's go over that. Talk about that.
There was, for example, when I was in telecom, there was a merger.
I hope I'm spelling that right, by the way. I'm not a good speller, so.
You're forgiven. So when I was in telecom, I remember that was part of a merger, and these two telecommunication companies came together. They said it was an acquisition. However, the one company, I was working for the smaller company, so the bigger company came and swallowed up the smaller company. And I had this experience where everyone was fired from the smaller company except for me. And I felt really guilty about that. But the only reason why I wasn't fired was because I had taught myself to learn the system that the new company had. And I was able to help the company transfer customers from one platform to the next. And what I saw during that experience was that the company that came on board fired people, but not just fired people, but they kicked them on the way out. Literally kicked them on the way out. And
what do you mean?
It was firing them without any real prior notice, firing them without having any real, some people were fired over the phone, Wow. Some people were not even giving ample time to make adequate decisions, or were not giving the information that they needed. For example, what do I do about healthcare? How do I, people were in absolute chaos. Yeah. So I got to witness that, and because I was the only one that wasn't getting fired, I was like in the middle of it, like, oh my God, what do I, and I was leading a lot of these individuals, and I had no answers. I wasn't getting phone calls back from my HR. People were devastated. We're talking about from one day to another, just letting 200 people go.
Wow.
And my first thought was like, that is so cold. That is so crazy. How can this be happening? How can we not have a system in place that will allow these employees, number one, to feel like, hey, maybe if the company could have done a better job in giving these individuals a process to follow, or a place to call, or just some leadway. So I felt that the way that it was done was not in a compassionate way. And that's at a grand scale, right? At a large level. But then there's other scenarios where I've seen leaders fire people, and they almost make in this particular company, in the finance company I was with, and they fire people as a game. And it sounds really crazy, right? Like, how is this happening out there? But I can assure you that it's out there. And I remember talking to so many people when I first launched the book and saying, oh yeah, that happened to me. I had that experience, and yeah. So compassion is a real huge thing when you're making decisions, because here's the deal. There's going to be mergers. There's going to be acquisitions. You're going to have to let people go. That's just part of business. That's just part of what happens. So if this is part of life, then why not do it in a compassionate way? Why not do it in such a way where people feel like, hey, this isn't the end all, but when you leave this company, I can either help you find something else, I can make sure that you transition well, and I can make sure that, you know, I do it with dignity. And that's really what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Dignity. There's no
Wow.
reason to kick people out, you know, to fire people and kick them as they're going. Now kick them on their way out is what I call it.
That's really
So
pretty cool. And what I'm going to interrupt you, I hope you don't mind. Like what I'm hearing is like I have a company. I want you to work for me, so I'm gonna look for people that I want to work for me. I find these people that can work for our company, that can help our company grow. At some point, our company, we can't use those people anymore. We've got to, we've got to downsize, or we're moving in a different direction. And what I want to say to all you people that work for me is we appreciate that. And not only are we gonna move forward, and unfortunately we're going to move forward without you, but we are starting to look for jobs for you. I mean, that's like what you're saying. That's what I hear about compassion. Like, how about a company that not only looks after their people and saying we're going to give you this, but where would you like to work next? How can we help you get there? How can we? It's like, why not? Why not? That's what we do for our kids. Our kids will come home and they come home and they have a little, a cut on their knee or something, or somebody said something mean to them, and we say, hey, put our arms around them and say, everything's going to be okay, and then we send them out again, stronger than they were, help them build a lesson. That's awesome. I love what you're saying.
Compassion. It's just the basic necessities of life. Like, can we be compassionate? Can we have something in place within these corporations that allows for us to be human? Be human. Yeah. There's great companies that already do that. For example, my favorite is Zappos with Tony Hsieh, and he's got a great philosophy with his company and the way that he treats his employees. So there's a lot of great examples. However, there's still a long way for us to go when it comes to the companies that are not performing in that way.
Absolutely. So what it kind of reminds me of that story again. Like when I was 20 years old, I started selling real estate, and that was before I was a loan officer. So I used to sell real estate, and there was a real estate agent that I was in a transaction with, and she calls me one day and she says, "Hey, Martin, would you mind going to lunch?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Mm-hmm. So we go to lunch, and we're sitting there at lunch, and we're talking. We're having a great conversation. She's helping me, give me some ideas for business. And then about halfway, 3/4 of the way through lunch, she says, "Martin, can I ask you a question?" I said, "Absolutely." Mm-hmm. And she says, "Why do you always fight with me every time you get off the phone?" And I'm like, well, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Well, every time I'm talking to you and we get something resolved, right before you get off the phone, you like start another fight." And I was thinking, no, I don't, And she goes, "Can I give you a couple of examples?" And I said, "Yes." And she gave me like 3 or 4 examples of where I started a fight, like right before I got off the phone. Like there was, selling real estate. So we resolved something for, the buyers. I was representing the buyer. She was representing the seller. So I resolved something. And then right before I got off the phone, I started another fight. I was like a little hostile. And she says, "Do you know why you do that?" And I thought, well, that's the way they do it in the movies. Like I'm 20 years old, Like, well, that's business, right? That's the way you do business. It's like it's supposed to be like that. So, the point I'm trying to make it, when we're talking about like the compassion and all that, is that like where do we get these ideas? Where are we getting our ideas that we're using in business? Like you're saying, like make compassionate decisions. It's like, well, we have all these other ways that we think business is supposed to be. We have ideas, and then we operate on those ideas, and we put strategies together on those ideas. But at what point do we stop and we question, why am I doing this? Like, what is like, where did I get this? First off, where did I get this idea from? Like this idea that I'm doing, and I'm acting this particular way in business or my personal life. Did I learn it from my mom? Did I learn it from my dad? Is it something I'm just keep moving forward? Does it even work? Does it even serve anybody? Mm-hmm. Is there something else I can do? And that's what I hear you saying. That's what I hear you learning. And we go back to this original boss. Is why was he doing what he was doing? Why was he firing people? Did he watch a movie? Did he come up with this idea? And is that the way he thought was the best way for him to operate? He goes, "This is the best way. I saw this." Like you say, talks about football. Well, football, you always bring in the next person. You're always, someone gets injured and you get rid of them. And
Right.
maybe he thought it was a football game. And I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know either, but I can tell you that the way that I learned these things was definitely from my parents, but then I was also really privileged because I worked with these amazing individuals. Like my bosses were like the best.
Yeah.
The best. I mean, I had such high standard, like I admired everyone that I ever worked for.
That's awesome.
And I just thought they were the coolest people, and loved their style, the way they were being. And then I get to this company and I'm like, whoa, what's happening? So I knew the difference.
Yeah.
But, to answer your question, like, where do we get this? I think that it's, a lot of it is how we are naturally, I believe. And then throughout the course of life, things happen and then something warps. Something happens, right?
Yeah.
No,
we call it a winning formula. In the curiosity theory, we call it a winning formula. It's that we go through life and then we keep adding what works. And that's how we keep winning in life. That's how we maintain our foundation. We maintain some degree of control over life. Right. Because I did this and I did this and I saw this and I saw this and I'm implementing this and I'm doing this. And then that's how we keep winning. It's a winning formula. But the winning formula only works for certain people. That's why in a football team you have coaches for every position. The running back coach doesn't coach the linebackers because there's a different philosophy. There's a different winning formula. But as human beings, we have like one winning formula and we keep adding to it. And then we expect that winning formula to work for everybody. I'm telling you, I've got a wife and 2 boys. I've got a wife and 2 kids, and they all think differently. And yet I will do Martine. I've got okay, so it's time for me to say something about something. And so I then get everybody, we all get around, we gather around on the couch and we're all going to have a conversation. And they all look at me. They know how I talk. They know how I do what I do. Right. And nothing happens. Nothing happens until I become curious about them. Because before that is just all my winning formula. This is how I think. This is how I think I should explain it. This is how I should talk about it. Let me explain to you the breakdown that I had about this incident or something like that. Maybe it could be the way everybody acted when we went out to dinner or we went to a party or, something like that. Or maybe one of the kids were doing something or their friends were doing something. And I talk about it. But nothing happens until they're able to speak and communicate the way they do. Until I'm curious about what's going on with them.
Right. And then you also allow them a safe place, a place where people feel safe and they feel heard. And I think that that's really important. I think that's why we gravitated, because we're talking about the same thing, right? About allowing this space. And when I read your book, I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting, because I don't think that I was ever curious about this boss that I had. I didn't. I was so upset about what he was doing that I didn't take the time to be curious, to even ask, like, dude, why are you doing this? Why are you firing people for no reason? And why are you laughing about it? Yeah. I was angry, I wasn't curious. I didn't want to be curious. I was like, so I love your philosophy. I think that it goes hand in hand with the pillars, I believe.
Oh, absolutely. I just love it. I love it. The trust, the service, and the making compassionate decisions. And it all requires the 4th pillar. Right?
So courage, it's so interesting that we're even talking about having courage at this point in history because of all of the political turmoil going on in the United States. But you have to have a level of courage to move forward. It's not easy stepping out and being different. So when I talk about courage and I teach this concept, it isn't just have courage and be courageous in the way that most people think about it. But you have to have the courage to be different, to not behave like everybody else, to not do what everybody else is doing. And that takes courage because we're communal beings. We're human beings that typically operate a lot better in a community. So for you to be out of that circle and out of the trends and out of what everybody else is talking about and out of what everybody else is doing, it takes courage. And that's what I'm talking about that kind of courage, to be able to call HR and say, you know what, last year my boss fired 223 people for no reason. They had no write-ups. They had done nothing wrong. So, my question to the company was, how can you justify this turnover? How can you justify, having to hire people? Because if you look at the statistics on how much money it takes for a new employee to come on board, I mean, you're talking about $100,000 just for an employee to get on board, get onboarded, get trained, and then you fire them within 3 months. It makes no sense.
And wonder why you're not profitable.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just having the courage to stand up for what you believe in, but even more so to have the courage to be different. So when I talk about that, it's about being different. It's about, taking your internal courage and saying, you know what, I'm not going to follow the crowd. I'm not going to do what everybody else is doing. I'm going to be different. And that takes courage,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love that. It's so you talk about trust, service, compassionate decisions, and courage is the key. Courage is the key that allows for all those to act upon that, right? To act upon those, to say, I'm willing to trust. I'm willing to be of service. I'm willing to express compassion. I'm willing to operate with compassion, which is ultimately what?
Nothing happens without courage. Nothing, absolutely nothing, because we're creatures of habit.
Yeah.
So we have
you're talking about stepping out, right?
Yeah, there's a level of courage that you need to have to be the outspoken one, to be the different one, to be someone that is not going to follow everybody else. And nowadays, with the craziness of the internet and the way that we're operating on this, almost like the internet and social media has us so hooked. And I'm not saying that I'm not into the social media trend, but it's happening, and we have to have the courage to step out of that and
What do you mean?
the whole picture.
What do you mean?
There's a lot of us, and myself included, that do get caught up with the social media. I think I was sharing with you last time around, like there was one day that I posted more than 10 Instagram pictures.
Yeah.
Like, why would anyone do that, right?
Sure.
I run a business, so of course a lot of it is the promotional side, but I'm thinking, what's the intention behind that? What's the intention behind that? So that right there, it takes the courage to be like, oh, you know what, this is not the way that I want to operate. Number two, I realize that social media can help you, but it can also hurt you. And I realize that I'm brave enough to say, hey, I need to pay attention to what's going on. I need to step out, which takes courage, and I need to be different. I need to have the social media platform work for me, not have the social media completely have me bombarded with the craziness and me not be aware of what's really going on. So that's really,
it'd be nice if we were one-dimensional. It'd be nice if we were like these one. Well, it wouldn't be nice, but I'm going to say it, kind of rhetorically. If we were a one-dimensional being where we had one thing, we can say, you're courageous, then do this, and this is what's going to happen. But we're not, and it takes courage to self-reflect. It takes courage to step out. It takes courage to say something that may rub somebody the wrong way, and then it takes courage to then go and clean that up. The whole idea of the curiosity theory is fundamentally, that we have observations, feelings, and needs. So when that is going on, how do we then operate with a foundation of understanding that what we're going to say is going to land for somebody a particular way, and they're most likely going to make a big meaning out of it. And is that going to be a positive meaning? Is it going to be a negative meaning? Does that meaning meet their needs? How are they going to react to it? And to be able to be nimble, to be able to navigate through not only what we're trying to say, but how it's being received. and then have the
Right.
courage to keep going in there. And then the other day, something happened with me and my son Diego, and I was thinking, I'm wrong. Like I am wrong in the way I'm handling this. And he was telling me, "You're wrong, Dad.
That
You,
takes
you handled
courage.
this wrong." And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm wrong. I was wrong." And I didn't grow up in an
That
environment
takes
where
courage.
my father
That
never
takes
my
courage
father never admitted he
to
was wrong.
say,
Never.
yeah, yeah. That's how I grew up like that too. My dad was never wrong.
Yeah,
There's
ever.
no way, that he would ever, yeah. So it's, different generation. But yeah, for you to be able to say that to your son, I'm wrong, that's huge. That's huge. That's evolution.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just think about this. We got we got the president. What if the president just one day said, "I was wrong. I was wrong. I shouldn't have tweeted that." What if the Feinstein said, "I was wrong. I should have given that information out. I was wrong. I let it leak." What if people just started being courageous and started saying the truth? Started
Absolutely.
saying the truth besides hiding about something, or what if people just said, "You know what? I understand that that's the way they feel, but for me, it doesn't feel the same way. I
Right.
understand. I just have a different opinion." What if a Democrat said to a Republican, or a Republican just said to a Democrat, just absolutely plainly, "You know what? I just disagree with you. I
Yeah.
understand we're going to do it that way, but my
Mhm.
philosophy disagrees with that. But you know what? I also agreed that if you won the vote, that we're going to move in your direction, and so I'm going to move forward, and I'm going to disagree with that, and I'm not going to make a big stink about it. I'm going to make the best of it. Let's make the best of it and just
Right.
move forward. Instead, what we do is, and this is just not politics. I mean, this thing that's happening in our country, which is we talk about divisiveness and all this and backstabbing and all that. That is not something that only exists in politics. The benefit we have as human beings is we can hide behind them doing it and act as though
Mhm.
we're not doing it in our own families, in our own
Right.
companies, in our
Yeah.
organizations, on baseball teams, football teams, volleyball teams, all that stuff. It happens. Like,
Right.
what's the difference of, was it Serena Williams the other day protesting and getting upset and then blaming somebody for something that happened and not taking responsibility for the way she got upset? And I'm not
Right.
saying she's wrong. I'm
Mhm.
saying at what point do we as human beings start to
Mhm.
take responsibility and have what you said, the courage, the trust,
Mhm.
the service to others, the being in service to others, and the compassion for what we're doing, compassion for ourselves and other people, compassion about what we're doing and the decisions we're making. And what kind
Mhm.
of, like, I'd say it's not just the corporate code, it's the human code.
Right. Oh yeah, I love that. That's a good one. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's important to always speak your truth no matter what.
Mhm.
So speak your truth. And that's been one thing that I've worked on for a very, very long time, because in my 30s I didn't speak my truth. I was really concerned about what other people thought, about what are they going to say, how is it going to look. And then when I got older, in my 40s, I realized that no, just speak your truth. Who cares? Yes, do it in a compassionate way, in a way that allows people to feel safe, in a way that allows people to be comfortable. But you're not going to change your philosophy or your views,
No, you're not.
if it doesn't if it doesn't suit you, who you are. So you definitely want to speak your truth. I'm a huge advocate of that, however that looks, and not really worry about what other people think. And I'm a huge advocate of that. It's the way that you deliver the information, it's the
Yeah.
way that you say it. So
And
you
that's the
know
whole idea of the curiosity theory is having power, having compassion, having trust, having safety, creating all those things in for yourself and then for other people, so that what you're
mhm,
delivering, when you're delivering a message and when you're receiving a message, that you
mhm,
can do it in a way that serves everybody. It serves yourself and it serves other people, the people involved.
absolutely,
And we're
absolutely.
not taught that. We're not taught how to communicate that way. Matter of fact, I think I say it in the third chapter is when we talk about emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence pretty much ends as far as training
Mhm,
after we're taught how to, if you cry, then mom's going to feed you. If you throw a fit, then dad's going to give you what you want, and that's pretty much it. And then if you look at people, junior high schoolers, young adults, the middle-aged, older people, everybody, is that there's so many people throwing fits to get what they want. That's the strategy that we use.
Right.
The curiosity theory is saying, you know what, that's a strategy, but that's bankrupt. It's a winning formula. It is only going to get you so far. But at what point are you willing to look at yourself? At what point are you willing to consider there might be another way to get what you want that includes other people getting what they want? And in the curiosity theory, what we teach is we teach the methodology to do that so that everybody wins. Everybody can win. And that's what seems like what the corporate code's all about too.
Yeah, and I think, like I said earlier, our philosophies are very similar, and it goes to the most important, I call them cornerstones, right? Those basic things that you have to have. And I think, both of us we're huge advocates of professional development, because a lot of the things that we're talking about, they don't teach you at universities.
Yeah.
Unless you take a special course for professional development, unless you're an avid reader and you're constantly reading about how to improve the way that you think. There's a huge movement right now on mindset and about shifting the way that you look at the world, and not for any other reason, but to really become a better you. And, they don't teach you that in universities. Unless universities have changed, it's not curriculum that is standard. So
it's funny that they don't do that. It's funny that they don't do that. A friend of mine sent me a text. I'm reading a text from a buddy of mine. It's like this really, really long text, and he knows I'm into self-development. He was talking about a course that's at Harvard by a guy named Ben. It's Ben Shahar, and it's the number one course that's ever been at Harvard. Like it's like the number one course that he teaches.
It's a certificate program, right? Because I think I know which one you're talking about. Because I looked at it too. I was like, this is amazing that Harvard has a professional development, right, type of course.
Positive psychology course, yeah.
Yes, and I was like, wow, that's huge. That's huge. Yeah, so that's huge. A step forward within the institutions, and I think that will benefit everybody. However, the people right now who are working for the corporations, it's been my experience, have no additional, work, or have no additional programs on or advocates of professional development, unless they're reading the Jim Rohns and the Darren Hardys and the John Maxwell's and so forth and so on. So there has to be a level of awareness that we do need to constantly be learning, and we need to constantly be assessing our mindset. Always be assessing your mindset, because if you're not, you will be left behind. You will be left behind. Everything is moving so fast that if you do not become aware that you need to not move as fast as everything is shifting, but all you have to do is tweak your mindset as the times are moving, and keep reading. I'm a huge advocate of always being an avid reader and always listening to different voices. So,
and my version of that is just stay curious. If you're able to implement curiosity, this thing in our, this little thing between our ears is the strongest computer out there. And human beings are brilliant. We're brilliant. And what stops us from using this thing is how we operate, is how we think about ourselves. We say, I'm not smart enough. I'm not good looking enough. I'm not a good enough salesman. I'm not a good dad. I'm not a good mom. I'm not a good enough leader. I'm not a good CEO. I was talking to a CEO the other day of a big company. It's a good friend of mine. And he was telling me where he thinks he falls short. And I thought that was brilliant. He can see. Yeah. He can see as a CEO. Yeah. I can see this is where I'm not strong. I am not strong here. But he said, Martine, but I'm really strong here. It's like boom, it's like that. So find, if you're out there, find out where are you strong, and build from there.
Yeah,
build
absolutely.
From there.
Yeah, and then your friend who's running a company, who's a CEO, CFO, just to be able to have the courage to say that at that level, because most people that are at that level are, a lot of them believe there's nothing more to learn. But if you get a really, really good, amazing leader, they're going to say, oh, this is where I fall short. I have the courage to admit it. and then this is what I'm good at, and then you're fully aware of what you're good at if you've
Yes.
done the work. If you've
Yeah.
done the work, you're aware of what you're stellar at, and so everything goes back to the pillars. It goes back to the curiosity theory about being curious, of being curious about yourself and about how it is you're working your life, or you're being how you're being in this life. So yeah, you brought something up yesterday, just real quick to wrap it up, is that you usually typically ask questions. You were asking questions and you were really being curious. And we made a distinction because as you were educating me on the curiosity theory, I made a distinction about, it isn't just about the questions, but it really is another element of being curious of what's really happening. So it's different. I love that. I love that you shared that with me, because I had an aha moment and I was like, oh yeah, it isn't just questions. It is really about being authentically curious about someone else. And I
Yeah.
think we're gonna have a lot more conversations about that. So
Yeah, absolutely. And like I'm in my backyard right now, and this is a batting cage. If you look behind, my kids are baseball players, and when I coach them, I can easily coach them as, this is the way you're supposed to swing. You swing this way, and or I can ask them a question. How are you swinging? And as a coach, I'm thinking, the answer. Like, I know the answer, and you didn't answer the question right. So when we ask questions, how often do we ask questions thinking that there's one answer? We're asking a question, but no, this is the answer to the question. And curiosity gives us that ability to sit back and go, I'm going to ask a question, but I'm going to be open to whatever answer comes back. Whatever answer comes back, I'm going to explore that one. I'm just going to keep exploring that one.
Yeah, and then hold no judgment for it. Hold no judgment for it. Just say, "Oh, that's interesting."
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, go with it. I mean, well, think about that. I mean, this phone right here, this iPhone. I mean, at some point, some crazy guy, like seriously, at some point, some crazy guy said, "Hey, let's," that rotary dial thing. I think we can move from that. Eventually, we can have people watch movies and videos and all that. It's like these are insane concepts, but they require a shift in the way we think. They require us to evolve as human beings. We go to 200 years ago. You had a lot of kids because you had to run a farm, you had to run a business. The kids were your employees. You made kids so that you could have people help you, and you could be a stronger family. You could survive. Things have shifted, and we've moved, and we've evolved. And 50, 60 years ago, the father got to say, he was the ruler of the house, and he went to the good book to say, I'm the ruler of the house, and blah blah blah. Well, things have changed. No, you're in my house. Now, it might be insanity, but I am not the ruler of my house. We are a team. We're like, my kids have ideas. My clients have ideas. My wife has ideas. Everybody has ideas. Trust. I am not that smart, and I don't care what school you went to. I know people that have gone to Harvard, to Yale, and all those. And trust me, all of those, everybody has deficiencies. And if somebody's running a company because they think they know the answers and they need people just to say yes to them, that is the old way. That is we've evolved. We are evolving away from that way of doing business. We are evolving away from that way of living life. Human beings are evolving. And yes, computers are going fast. Yes, the world's moving fast. But this heart and this mind and this spirit that we have is begging to be expressed, is begging for whatever it's begging, to be challenged, and begging to be to move forward. So embrace yourself, embrace what you have, and let's move forward.
Absolutely. So
let's wrap up.
Yeah, let's wrap up. I encourage everyone to really take a look at their environment in the corporate world, their experiences, and then start having a conversation. Join my Facebook group. I have a Facebook group for the conversation on the corporate code and how to implement trust, courage, compassion, and service within your company. And even within your home, because these are all elements that are personal cornerstones. So I encourage you to join my group, and I appreciate you having this conversation with me, Martin. I love your curiosity theory. I love your book, and I think that we're going to be having more conversations.
Yeah,
For
we
sure,
are. We are. The
about
corporate
these
code's
topics.
amazing. So make sure you connect with Adriana, and and connect with me. We have our Facebook fan pages, and we'll post those in the comments after this. We'll go back and post those, and please connect with us. And this is the thing: we didn't know what we were going to talk about until yesterday when we went over it, and so I just want to say this with you real quick, Adriana. Like, so where are we going from here? I think the next pillar is love. How do we bring love into
Yeah, I
the
think that that's
workplace?
our next conversation for
Let's
sure.
do
And I
that.
think, yeah, we can. I mean, that's going to be something that we can really dig deep
Let's do
and
that.
really talk about. Yeah, how we can incorporate that in the corporate world. So I think that'll be a great conversation for sure.
Okay. So next
Yeah.
week, next Saturday, same time, 9 o'clock, we are going to talk about, Adriana and I are going to talk about how to incorporate love in the workplace. How would you say it, Adriana?
How to just be real, authentic, and really operate from a place of love.
So
And
be
it's
here.
possible. It's possible. It's possible. So yeah, let's have that conversation for sure.
Be here next Saturday. We'll see you. Thanks a lot for being here.
Thanks.
Adriana, thank you very much.
Thanks everyone. Bye bye.